If you had told me that the quiet little girl sweeping up brass and changing paper targets at Pacific Vista would one day outshoot Navy SEALs on their own range, I'd have laughed, right? Yeah, that happened. 12 years old, scrawny, soft voice, I figured I'd get ignored if I opened my mouth, maybe even told off. But the day I corrected Master Chief Kelly's shooting technique in front of his team, everything I thought I knew about who gets listened to, who gets taken seriously, turned upside down. You know what I mean? That one moment changed my life. And if you've ever wondered what it takes for someone so unexpected to walk into a world they don't belong in and absolutely leave their mark, just settle in, because you're about to see how fast everything can change when the right people are finally paying attention. See, that morning started like 100 others. I was out at the 500-yard line, kneeling in the early fog, carefully stapling up fresh bullseyes, my dad Rick busy in the office, and a team of Navy SEALs getting more frustrated by the minute on the firing line. Petty Officer Walsh, big guy, chip on his shoulder, cursing out a perfectly good rifle, blaming the scope, the barrel, the sun, you name it. Even a few of his teammates started teasing him about needing remedial training, which only made it matter. The thing is, I've been watching him shoot for an hour, just soaking it all in the way I always did. His breathing was all over the place, his grip was like he was strangling the rifle, and every shot he fired, he'd slap the trigger like he was ringing a doorbell for the pizza guy. Now, I knew better than to say anything. Military customers, especially guys like that, they don't want to hear it from a civilian, and especially not from a girl who doesn't look a day over 10. My dad had always told me, range staff should be seen, not heard. But there I was, kneeling by the targets, listening as Master Chief Kelly cut through the noise, telling Walsh, the rifle's not your problem. It was zeroed by Hunter yesterday. Even as the guys kept making jokes, I couldn't help but want to fix what I saw. It drove me crazy not to. When Walsh lost it, threw the rifle, and said something about equipment failure for the 5th time, I felt the words slip out before I could stop myself. The rifle's fine. You're pulling your shots left because you're anticipating recoil. Let me back up a sec. There's a silence that hits you when you realize every set of eyes on a range is suddenly locked on you, and none of them are smiling. My heart was hammering so hard I thought they'd see it through my shirt. But Master Chief Kelly just tilted his head, almost amused. You think you know what he's doing wrong? I nodded. What else could I do? His grip's too tight, and he's jerking the trigger. Plus, his breathing's all wrong. And just like that, my fate was sealed. I half expected to get laughed at, but Kelly didn't even blink. And you think you could do better? It wasn't a dare, it was a real question. I remember thinking, if I back down now, that's it. I'll always be the little helper who keeps quiet. But if I step up, I might just embarrass myself in front of the best shooters in the country. Still, I looked at that rifle, looked back at him, and said, I'll try. The next few minutes felt like slow motion. Kelly handed me the rifle, made sure it was safe, and said, you make the shot, I'll buy lunch for the whole team. Miss, and you'll have to explain to my CEO why a civilian is handling military weapons. Stakes, right? But I thought about every Saturday morning with my dad, every lesson drilled into me about form, breathing, patience, and I took the rifle. He asked me about my background, and when I mentioned my dad, Gunnery Sergeant Rick Davis, retired Marine sniper instructor, suddenly the mood shifted. One of the SEALs, Lane, actually whistled, Gunny Davis? From Camp Pendleton. The respect in the air went up a notch, and now nobody was laughing. Even Walsh's bravado faded. I dropped to the line, ran through my mental checklist: elbow placement, bone support, grip like holding a bird, cheek weld, natural respiratory pause. Don't hold your breath, my dad's voice echoed in my mind. Just exhale halfway and let it settle. I showed them everything proper form, why each step mattered, even let Brooks, the only female SEAL, check my position. Then, without drama, I put 3 rounds in a group the size of a quarter, dead center at 500 yards. The range went silent, and even the wind seemed to pause, like it wanted to see what would happen next. Pierce, the team CEO, had shown up by then. He looked at the target, looked at me, and just shook his head. Outstanding shooting. Now show us what Walsh was doing wrong. I mimicked Walsh's mistakes, exaggerated the jerky trigger, the bad grip, the way muscle tension ruins everything. They watched, taking it all in, and Brooks actually laughed. That's exactly what he was doing. Under pressure, it's easy to forget fundamentals. That's when everything started to shift. They didn't see me as a kid anymore. They saw someone who could help. What followed was a floodgate moment. Kelly gathered his team, and instead of just focusing on Walsh, they started asking me about their own shooting. Lane was lifting his head too soon. Shaw made the right wind correction once, then never checked again. Brooks had perfect technique, but was tunnel-visioned through her dominant eye. I gave honest, practical advice, just like my dad would have. For the first time, I saw how all those years of quiet watching, thinking, analyzing, they actually mattered. But with new attention came new problems. Within 3 weeks, I was juggling SEAL training after school and 7th grade algebra during the day. Pierce made me go through a psychological evaluation, said it was policy before a civilian worked that close with special ops. The Navy shrinks wanted to know if I could handle the pressure or if I was missing out on being kid. My answer? I just want to be useful. School feels pointless when I know exactly what I want to do. Maybe that sounds cold, but when you see what you're capable of, it's hard to pretend otherwise. Soon after, Admiral Hayes himself called my dad in for a meeting. The Navy wanted to make me a civilian contractor part-time, paid, training SEALs on marksmanship analysis. It felt surreal. My family could barely keep up with bills, and suddenly I was the breadwinner at 12. I agreed, but only if I could keep learning from them, not just teaching. I learned fast that military bureaucracy is a beast. Security briefings, waivers, background checks, and Sergeant Major Wells grilling me on operational security like I was heading to deployment. But as soon as I stepped back on the range, now as a legit consultant, the nerves faded. Walsh, once the doubter, became my biggest supporter. He'd ask, "Show the team what you taught me about reading Mirage," and suddenly I was teaching advanced techniques about heat distortion and wind patterns to some of the best shooters in the world. Here's where the twist comes in: success at the range made school harder, not easier. Gossip spread like wildfire. Some kids said I was training to be a sniper, others called me a freak. My teachers were worried. My mom wanted me to have a normal childhood. I started to feel split in two, caught between two worlds: the mundane hallways of Coronado Middle and the high-stakes, respect-driven world of the SEALs. One day, Coach Pam Reed, a civilian marksmanship coordinator, brought me in to troubleshoot a joint exercise between Marines and Navy shooters. Both groups were set in their ways, refusing to learn from each other, and the results were a mess: fast Marines, precise Navy, zero teamwork. I bridged the gap by suggesting hybrid breathing techniques, blending combat speed with deliberate accuracy. For the first time, both sides dropped their egos and started to listen. And afterward, Captain Morgan invited me to advise at an upcoming inter-service marksmanship competition, including international teams. Suddenly, my methods weren't just for the Navy, FBI, DEA, foreign military units started calling. It was wild, but all this came at a cost. The more I excelled, the more isolated I became from kids my age. My principal started talking gifted programs. My mom worried I'd burn out. I started questioning if I was missing something irreplaceable by growing up too fast. That's when Gary Hill, the range owner, sat me down. He showed me old photos of himself, a prodigy, national champion, Olympic hopeful, and told me how single-minded focus had cost him everything but his medals. "You got to stay a complete person," he said. "Chase excellence, but don't forget to live." That landed. When even the SEALs started telling me to consider a gifted academy in San Diego, I finally got it. I could combine marksmanship with broader academic pursuits, become more than a one-trick expert. Leaving Coronado for the academy was bittersweet. The SEALs threw me a send-off, gave me a custom rifle case, and a notebook of everything we'd learned together. I realized then what I valued most was not the skill, but how it let me help people find abilities in themselves they never knew they had. Being exceptional is a burden, sure, but it's also a chance to do something bigger than yourself. I spent the next months pushing the limits of what I thought I could learn. Advanced calculus kicked my butt. Biomechanics labs made me rethink everything I knew about precision. But with each new challenge, I saw how my old skills gave me an edge. I started consulting on athletic performance, quality control, even medical diagnostics. Every field needed the same thing, someone who could see the pattern nobody else saw. Then came a call that changed everything again. NATO training in Germany was falling apart, accuracy problems, systemic across multiple elite units. The Navy needed my analysis. My academy let me go, but only if I turned it into a research project. I flew to Germany, diagnosed wind eddy patterns caused by new range construction, and within days, multinational units were back to hitting targets, and I was being asked to consult for international teams. And through all this, I kept growing as a student, as a teacher, as someone who understood that expertise meant seeing connections, not just technical skills. I got to come home, walk the 500-yard line with Gary, look back at how far I'd come, and realize I was no longer just Rick Davis's daughter or the girl who outshot a SEAL. I was becoming the kind of person who could move between worlds, teach at the highest level, and still ask, what else am I capable of? That's the real story. The day I corrected a Navy SEAL, I didn't just change his shooting, I changed my life, and maybe a few others too. Excellence is a journey, not a destination. So let me ask you, what would you have done in my place? Would you chase every opportunity or try to stay a kid a little longer? Do you think being exceptional is a blessing, a curse, or just a challenge we all face in our own way? Drop your thoughts below. Argue if you want, that's how we grow. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, share it, because sometimes the person nobody's watching is the one who changes everything.